When an elderly man brought his sick dog to the veterinarian clinic to be euthanized, he was beside himself with grief. But just before the devastating procedure could be carried out, something unexpected happened that left the poor man shaken to his very core. People form strong attachments to their pets. They become a part of the family who love them as if they were real people and not just animals. This was the case for elderly grandfather Jacob, who had owned his dog Buddy for 7 years. Buddy was a black Labrador who had kept the old man company ever since the death of his wife many years prior. Jacob loved Buddy very much, and the pair were pretty inseparable. The old man didn't get too many visitors, and even his own family didn't come and see him nearly as much as they did when his beloved wife was still alive, so he lived a very lonely existence. Luckily though, Buddy was fantastic company and gave the elderly gent a reason to get up each morning. Despite being 91, he was still relatively active and liked to take walks. So whenever he could, he would slip a lead around Buddy's neck and take the dog for long walks around the countryside near his home. The dog would happily walk alongside his owner and would not pull the lead or try to run off. In fact, on the occasions when Jacob removed the lead and let him run free, Buddy never ran too far and always returned as if to check up on the old man. Sometimes, when the weather was nice, Jacob would sit on a bench in the park, the same bench that he and his wife used to sit in many years before, and he would talk to the dog. He would tell him about his wife, how he was feeling, and what they would be doing for the next few days. Buddy sat and attentively listened, cocking his head every now and again as if he completely understood what the old man was talking about. But one morning, Jacob awoke to find that Buddy didn't come running. Buddy was usually at his heel as soon as he got out of bed, so it was unusual to find the Labrador wasn't there. Jacob walked to the dog's bed and found him laid with a sad look in his eye. Immediately, Jacob got anxious. He didn't like seeing his dog and his only friend in this way. The dog seemed uninterested in food, and he didn't want to go for a walk when Jacob wattled his lead. The old man was worried, and he hoped Buddy would be feeling better the next day. But several days later, Buddy was still in the same condition. He had barely moved, eaten, or drunk, instead just sleeping and whining every now and then. Jacob had pulled up a chair next to Buddy's bed, and he read out loud to him, partly to keep his own mind from worrying, and partly to provide some comfort to his beloved dog. The morning after, though, Buddy could barely even lift his head or open his eyes. It was clear that Jacob needed to take him to the vet to find out what was wrong. When Jacob and Buddy arrived at the veterinarian clinic, the human struggled to get the limp dog inside, but still did his best to keep his best friend comfortable. All the while, Buddy was softly and quietly whining. As soon as the receptionist saw the elderly man struggling with the dog, she rushed to help him and carried him straight into the vet's office, where she laid him down on the table. The vet got to work, studying Buddy. She listened to his heart, checked his eyes, and felt all over his body, trying to figure out exactly what was wrong. It was soon discovered that Buddy had a serious infection, and that if it was to be cured, they would need to treat it very soon. The illness was causing Buddy a lot of pain, and if it was left untreated, it would more than likely spread to the rest of his body and ultimately kill him. The news hit Jacob like a ton of bricks. Buddy was one of the only companions he had left in the world, and at this point, the dog seemed more family to him than his actual family. So the news that Buddy was so severely sick greatly upset the elderly man. He didn't know what he would do if he lost his best friend. Unfortunately though, treatment for the infection would be very expensive. Jacob didn't have too much money saved up, and he would not be able to afford the life-saving treatment that Buddy would need to survive. The realization slowly crept into the elderly man's mind that his beloved pet would most likely die in agony, filled with infection and terror. Tears started to form in Jacob's eyes as he looked down at poor Buddy. The vet understood the old man's predicament and made a suggestion. She told Jacob that the dog could be euthanized, which would be much quicker and far less painful. With one simple little injection, Buddy would fall peacefully asleep and pass away quickly and quietly. This was by far the most preferable option, but Jacob didn't want Buddy to die at all. He couldn't imagine living in a world without his poor dog and the important company he provided. Buddy had done and still did more for Jacob than he would ever realize. Tearfully, Jacob told the vet that he would try to raise the money for the treatment. He dug into his pockets and put down a few crumpled notes on the table as a deposit before softly scooping up Buddy and shuffling out of the room. As he did so, he told the vet that he would be back in 3 days with the rest of the money. But the days passed and Jacob was unable to raise the needed amount. The morning of the appointment, Jacob quietly wept as he put on his clothes, gathered together what little money he had, and picked up Buddy and hugged him close. Jacob told the poor dog he was so sorry that he couldn't save him, and Buddy just softly whined as if he understood what would soon be happening to him. Arriving at the vet's, Jacob still had tears flowing from his eyes. He carried the poor dog all the way to the vet's office and sat stroking his head as Buddy lay sadly on the table. The vet prepared the injection that would soon send the dog to sleep and make him peacefully pass away. As he approached Buddy, Jacob couldn't hold his tears back any longer and sobbed bitterly as he hugged Buddy one last time. There was a long pause where there was no sound but Jacob's heavy sobs and Buddy's soft whining as they awaited the inevitable to happen. The vet put down the syringe and looked thoughtfully at the old man and the dog. She walked over to Jacob and kneeled down next to his chair, stroking her hand up and down his back to console him. She could see how much the dog meant to the elderly man and how important Buddy was in his life. And because of this, she had made a decision. She would do the treatment for free. Buddy was still relatively young and should have many years of happy life ahead of him, and Jacob was scared and alone in this world and needed his beloved dog to help him carry on. There was no way that the vet could destroy not one, but 2 lives in that way. She had become a doctor to save lives, and that's exactly what she promised Jacob she would do. Jacob was elated and hugged the vet tightly. She laughed and even shed a tear or two herself as she realized what a difference she was making. Soon enough, Buddy was taken into surgery, and the vet got to work eradicating all traces of the nasty infection from the dog's body. Thankfully, she managed to complete her task, and Jacob was over the moon when he found out that Buddy would survive and be as fit and strong as he had ever been. Jacob couldn't thank the vet enough. He offered her the money that he had collected, but she refused. But every now and then, she would visit Jacob and Buddy, taking a walk with them and keeping the elderly man and the dog company. Not only had she saved Buddy's life, but she had made a lifelong friend in Jacob too, making the elderly man's life a little less lonely. What did you think of this incredible and heartwarming story? How would you react if a vet told you your pet had to be euthanized? And would you offer to pay for someone else's pet treatment if you could afford to? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below.